been clearly outlined at this report. Cameroon's penal code punishes all acts of insurrection with imprisonment terms from 10 to 20 years. Government warns against illegal gatherings, the usurpation of order, and the destruction of public or private buildings. The Electoral Board of Elections Cameroon holds its first statutory session before the December 6th regional election, charting the course of all phases and working on the procedure for candidates' nomination papers. The two predominantly English-speaking regions hit by socio-political upheavals prepare for the new school year with commitments taken to brave the security and health threats and to give education a chance. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 News.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
We begin our 30-minute newscast with government's condemnation of all calls of insurrection ahead of the December 6th regional election. Section 116 of Cameroon's Penal Code clearly outlines that insurrection, the disruption of the functioning of state institutions, usurpation and the destruction of public and private buildings is punishable. Kilian Dandifon in the following report presents what awaits defaulters of the code.
The law is hard, but it is the law. Jura lex sed lex. The penal code is clear on offences of public manifestations in Cameroon.
If a meeting is banned and the organizers go ahead to organize a meeting, then they violated the provisions of Section 231 of our penal code. This section punishes not only the organizers, it punishes those who are also participating. The prison term is from 3 months to 6 months, and the organizers of that public rally which is not authorized or which has been prohibited shall see their punishment doubled.
The 2014 law on terrorism has a large field of competence.
That law states that any act that causes the partial or total dysfunction of any government organ is considered as terrorism, and the prison term there is life imprisonment.
Competent state administrations can even act before the law courts.
The Minister of Territorial Administration, which plays a supervisory role over political parties, has a right to suspend the political party for 3 months in case the political party violates any of the laws provided, and then the minister can even outrightly ban a political party.
The penal code punishes insurrection 10 to 20 years and revolution for life in prison. Rebellion is 3 to 4 years prison terms.
The blueprints to manage the December 6th regional election has been adopted by members of the Electoral Board of Elections Cameroon. This was at the first session as of rights of the board, presided by its chair, Eno Abrams Egbe, in preparation of the maiden regional election in the country. Beatrice Lawsamba reports on the meeting today, where the members also worked on the methodology for candidates' nomination papers.
It is that season of action for the organ that sees to the smooth running of the elections governing body. Board members of the Electoral Board of ELECAM report to the headquarters for the first session as of right, bringing feedback from 58 divisions in the heart of preparations for the December 6th regional elections.
We are here this morning to see how far the work has been done and by our boys in the field. Now we are expecting files to be meeting on very soon. So everything is set. ELECAM is ready.
ELECAM is expecting regions to deposit nomination lists for the elections by September 22, 15 days following the convening of the electoral colleges, according to the law. In line with the law, the sessions as of right will hold every 2 weeks following the convening of the electoral colleges until polling day. board members spring into action for the success of the country's first regional elections that will crown the decentralization process.
Away from the regional elections 1 year on, one of the recommendations of the Commission of Decentralization and Local Developments of the major national dialogue is the partial funding of the decentralization process. The General Code on Local and Regional Authorities makes provision for at least 15% of state funds to be disbursed each year for local development. As Clarissa Reitagam reports, the implementation of the measure is considered a welcome relief by council authorities.
Hundreds of billions of CFA francs to fund decentralization in Cameroon each year. The major national dialogue recommended between 10 to 15% of state resources for that purpose. The December 2019 General Code on Regional and Local Authorities settled on a portion which cannot be less than 15% of state resources.
We are hopeful and expectant. Councils will be able to work effectively, plan their activities without which they cannot fulfill their missions. We will have the means to do our job well for the growth of communities.
The general allocation for decentralization is miles away from the credit delegation method hitherto used to fund council activities. Local authorities complained about issues of fairness in their distribution.
The funds will be added to existing tax revenue and other funds from the state. Local councils will become growth harbors at the local and regional levels. This will enforce development in various communities. The fight against poverty and project execution will become more effective.
While many acknowledge that, the decentralization train still has a number of coaches to hook up with each other for a smooth ride. 15% of state resources to develop local communities is as good a start as any.
Still in development news, a project on the reorganization of the functioning of the Yaoundé City Council has been validated. This was during an extraordinary session chaired by the city mayor, Luc Messi Atangana. The administrative and management accounts of the council for 2019 were also adopted by the councillors. Gilbert Ongena was there and now reports for the 7:30 News.
This council session comes at a time when the city of Yaoundé is bracing up to host international sports events like the CHAN and AFCON. This explains why Luc Messi Atangana emphasized the need to speed up the ongoing fight against urban disorder, poor management of domestic waste, and the need to promptly regulate commercial motorcycle riders who don't comply with the rules of the game. Other topical issues included the need to check environmental pollution and the revamping of the municipal police. The new text spells out that the municipal police would henceforth better accompany the National Police Force in its mission of checking crime, public indecency, and other social ills. The councillors rose hoping to have the collaboration of all city dwellers to help them achieve their objective of making the national capital the model city that it is supposed to be.
On to one of our top stories. The education community in the Northwest region is getting set for the upcoming school year in spite of the security and global health challenge. In a campaign led by Governor Adolphe de l'Afrique in the Fundong market, the population was encouraged to push for the respect of children's rights to education and to shun all calls for school boycotts. Kilo Valérie Insala tells us more.
This is what is left of a government primary school in Bafut Mezam division. Other nearby schools are deserted. In Boyo division, government bilingual high school Fundong is dragged into this state of destruction. An August 28, 2020 document jointly signed by leaders of 5 teachers' trade unions indicate that over 428 schools in the Northwest have either been partially or wholly looted, occupied by armed groups, or partially or wholly burnt down last year.
Our is not here for grantedly. Let us use it. Allow peace to come back. Class resume.
Here, the divisional officer for Bafut speaks of the importance of education. His message is backed by the Bafut Council.
Scholarships are already put in place by the Bafut Council for the 5 best pupils.
Even in Donga Mantung Division, where its headquarters in Cambe is noted for defying school boycott, education is still stifled in neighboring villages. The administrative authorities are preaching the back-to-school message with a keen eye on seeing a different reality in October.
The Southwest region is also one of the parts of the country whose education progress has been badly hit by the socio-political upheaval. That notwithstanding, some parents are looking forward to a hitch-free school resumption, and while they purchase stationery, others are getting their children enrolled. Details with Annabelle Ndike and Awanyang.
Changing the lives of the youth through education has always been an occupation of the government, despite the socio-political crisis faced in the Anglophone region and the COVID-19 threat.
Anti-COVID-19 measures that were put in place in March, we'll have to continue with them. We also have a category of schools that have not functioned for the past 3 years, some 2 years, and we have some cases of such schools that are ready for this next school year.
According to a parent, she's getting set even though faced with financial difficulties.
I've looked for admission, but for books and registering the children for the forthcoming academic year, nothing of that nature has been done.
As the 5th of October draws near, the call for effective school resumption is eminent to all educational stakeholders.
The countdown to the 2020-2021 school year is narrowing, and parents have begun their search for textbooks in Yaoundé. Shop owners confirm that 80% of textbooks on the official book lists for the 2 subsystems of education are available. For publications expected to be shipped from abroad, bookshop operators are optimistic that they will be handy before the month runs out. Rahanato Saleh reports on the level of preparedness in some parts of the nation's capital.
An empty basket quickly filled up with a dozen textbooks. These parents and little Fabricia go home with all the textbooks on their list.
All the textbooks that I needed is okay, with the workbooks too. I'm satisfied.
I have all my textbooks. Only one is left to me to buy.
80% of textbooks on the official book list are available this year at reduced cost for both subsystems of education.
80% of the books are available now. Some books are upper seat, lower seat, and premier for the francophone one are still scarce.
Next door, the atmosphere is less busy. Shop owners are taking down orders. They reassure that the textbooks are on the shelves.
Even those that were introduced as Latin, the textbooks are equally available. The policy now in the ministry has been that parents should spend less in getting textbooks for their children. And so the textbooks which were in the book list of last year are still there this year.
For now, all imported textbooks are lacking, but shop owners confirm their availability in the coming weeks.
In order to ease access to textbooks during the school year, publishers and bookshop owners will be organizing a book fair in Yaoundé on September 24. According to the initiators led by Ferdinand Nana Payong, the one-week exhibition will enable parents and guardians purchase the prescribed textbooks at affordable rates. He now expounds on the essence of the fair.
All over the world, before the school reopening, we have this type of trade fair. The particularity is that we have a marketplace which is open. When you want to buy your books, you go to many bookshops through the town, and you can meet some books who are not good books. The parents will come here not only for books. We have conference, we have animation, because we think that if we don't develop our country, nobody will come and develop it.
In scene 3 of our special reports on the Made in Cameroon brand, we spotlight the country's coffee and cocoa expertness. With over 25,000 tons of coffee sold in the last 2 years, its Arabica and Robusta brands remain highly exported because of their quality. Ewan Epole looks at how these cash crops are processed and transformed to local productions.
The National Cocoa and Coffee Board, NCCB, forecast a slight 2.2 increase in Cameroon's cocoa and coffee production for the 2020-2021 season. According to the board, the country's production could rise from 264,000 tons to over 269,000 tons in the coming season. The NCCB explains that marketed cocoa and coffee production in the previous season increased by almost 4% from 254,000 to 264,000 tons. This increase, according to the Cameroon Cocoa and Coffee Board, was due to the substantial improvement in the quality of the beans, giving it much value in the local and international market. This has also increased local demand from cocoa and coffee processors, like the new Neo Industries plant in Kekem, opened in 2019 with an estimated annual processing capacity of 26,000 tons of cocoa transformed into chocolate and other locally consumed products.
Each of us must comply with the measures that have been taken.
A joint conference is currently taking place at the Ministry of Communications. One of the key points at the joint conference, highlighted by government spokesperson Rene Emmanuel Sadi, is for all Cameroonians to continue respecting COVID-19 preventive measures. The Minister of Communication talked about the COVID-19 pandemic, and even though as of September 10, the country recorded some 18,857 treated cases, everyone still has to respect the World Health Organization barrier measures. We shall be coming back to that press conference subsequently in this newscast. We now take you to the Adamawa region. Para-educators in the Adamawa region have joined the AIDS-Free Holiday campaign team to sensitize on the HIV/AIDS pandemic and the coronavirus. 60 youth will be engaged in the exercise and were urged during the launch to be ambassadors of responsible behavior. Silas Nkwine has the details.
After their training in Gaoundiri, the 60 para-educators henceforth have a one-month mission to sensitize their peers through door-to-door campaign, create awareness, increase change in behavioral pattern, and impact them with the vital knowledge to protect themselves against HIV/AIDS.
Now they have all the materials that they may need, and now they are in the field to do the work that we have asked them to do.
And given that the 2020 edition of the campaign is holding amidst the coronavirus pandemic, emphasis would also be placed on the preventive measures to help the youth ward off the virus.
We have also done the COVID-19 test to all of them. We have made sure that now they can go, and all the measures taken to limit the propagation of this COVID-19.
As the campaign unfolds in the Adamawa capital, the overall HIV/AIDS prevalence rate in the region stands at 3.9%.
Going to hospital during the coronavirus spread is quite a scare for most pregnant women. Not only do they dread contracting the virus in hospitals, they are also preoccupied with the possibility of testing positive for the virus. To turn the tables around, gynecologists have opted for online antenatal consultations to keep both the expectant mothers and healthcare givers safe. This is what Baldwin Simon and his guest, Dr. Robinson Bo, will be focusing on at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center. Hello, Baldwin.
Good evening to you, Esther Kim, and welcome. It remains a sensitive topic for pregnant women, especially those who have been tested positive for COVID-19, given that there is so much they need to know as to what exactly they need to do in case any of them has been infected with the virus. That is what we shall be discussing with our guest tonight, Professor Robinson Bo, who is a seasoned gynecologist and Director of Family Health in the Ministry of Public Health. Good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
When we talk about outreach antenatal consultation, consultation for asymptomatic and those who are mildly symptomatic pregnant women who have been tested positive for COVID-19. What's it all about?
It simply means that these women who are not really in danger can touch base with healthcare providers on telephone, on WhatsApp messages. We can consult them through these appropriate technologies. We don't need to see them because the peak of this COVID thing usually between 2 and 3 weeks. And then after the 2 and 3 weeks, their symptoms must have regressed. They can then come physically and see their healthcare providers. So we can consult through the phone. Fortunately, almost every woman in Cameroon has a smartphone. So you can talk to your doctors, can talk to your nurses on your situation. And we can prescribe because most of the drugs that we take during pregnancy are across-the-counter drugs. We don't need a prescription for iron, for example. You don't need a prescription for folic acid, for example. Paracetamol, you don't need anything like a prescription. So it is possible for us to touch base with these women without seeing them from a distance using our smartphones or ordinary phones through messages, through phone calls, and through WhatsApp videos.
And what would that take a message to these women watching you this evening?
I would simply tell them that once you are tested positive, you can stay where you are. If you don't have symptoms, all of your symptoms are what you can manage. And you can touch base with healthcare providers through telephones, through video calls, and through ordinary messages, and we'll reach out to you with appropriate comprehensive antenatal care.
Thank you so much, Professor Robinson Boo, the Director for Family Health in the Ministry of Public Health. The message has been sent across. These pregnant women, especially those who have been tested positive for COVID-19, should avoid relying on auto-medication. They should make use of the different gynecologists who are available in the different government hospitals. Back to you, Esther Kima.
Thanks very much, Baldwin. With the antenatal online consultations, pregnant women need not dread the coronavirus pandemic. On to sports, Cameroon's intermediate lions have begun training ahead of the African Nations Championship billed for January 2021. The players called to camp by head coach Yves Clément Aroga were in a fitness session at the CAF Excellence Center in Bankomo. Daniel Ekonde reports on the training, which will end on the 30th of September.
It has been 5 months since they stopped training because of the current health crisis. Now there's much catch-up to do.
They have many work to do. So we know that is not easy, but we are going to give all those things we have.
The training that we're training at home is not sufficient to even have a victory. So I believe if we could start at the 0 level gradually with the potential we have, believing in the coaches, I know we can still do it.
29 out of the 30 players listed for the 2-week training are present. Absent is goalkeeper Simon Omosola. Coach Clément Aroga says he didn't show up, so he's been replaced by PWD Bamenda keeper Anya Derrick. The players did a series of tests, including COVID-19, upon their return. Dr. Tom Bodeba, the team's medic, says they have their health. But the challenge now is to cover the 5 months lost.
And as we announced earlier, one of the key points of the joint press conference highlighted by government spokesperson Rene Manuel Sadi is for all Cameroonians to continue respecting COVID-19 preventive measures. Here's an excerpt of the minister selected by Constantine Baum.
The bull by the horns to reduce the impact of households, preserve the national economic fabric, and ensure the training of young learners, particularly at secondary and higher education levels, by ordering the resumption of a number of activities important for the well-being of our fellow citizens. These include the reopening of drinking spots and leisure facilities, the completion of the school and academic year with the effective holding of official examinations, the gradual resumption of economic activities throughout the country. With regard to the health response itself, the control of the pandemic has resulted in the stabilization of data on the number of patients under treatment and the rate of contamination. In general terms, The results are particularly encouraging, with a recovery rate of over 94.12% and a case fatality rate of 2.08%.
And that excerpt by a government spokesperson brings us to the end of the 7:30 news, in which you mainly heard that Cameroon's penal code punishes all acts of insurrection with imprisonment terms from 10 to 20 years. Government is warning against all illegal gatherings, the usurpation of order, and the destruction of public and private buildings. At 8:30 p.m., you'll be in the company of Rumia Chuse. I'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 p.m., God willing, for a better edition of the 7:30 news. Thanks for watching. Good night.
In this connection, we should avoid stigmatizing